All right, everyone. Without further ado, thanks for joining us. I'd like to introduce a fabulous children and family photographer from here in Portland, Oregon, my lovely wife and talented photographer, Whitney Stevens.
Hello, I'm super excited to be here. I hope everybody can hear me okay. It is fun to see where everybody's from, so it's great that you guys were able to tune in all over the world here. I can't imagine what time you guys are awake and trying to listen here. Can everybody see my screen? Are we good now?
I believe so. If anybody let us know you're seeing us and hearing us correctly, that'll be great.
So Dan gave quite the little introduction. I've done other webinars as well, so I don't know if any of you have seen me before. So I don't want to do too much backstory, but I do own a portrait studio here in Portland, Oregon. I primarily shoot children and family. I do a few seniors and a few other random things as well. We don't really do weddings anymore. We did do that in the past, but definitely my favorite thing to do is to photograph children. So today I kind of wanted to share a little bit about these mini events that we do at our studio, and then kind of go into that a little bit and talk about how I edit and what I do to make post production a little bit quicker on those type of sessions. So mini events are not a new thing. I didn't invent the wheel. I know there's many studios that do that already. But for us, we sat down at the beginning of the year, and what you have seeing on your screen right now is our year events that we are doing, or in the middle of, I guess, for this year. That we have created each month. We have done one little mini session, and for those that don't know what a mini session is, it's basically a 30-minute session or less, depending on the type of session that it is, where I will create a theme or a look or a location, or if it's a holiday set or whatever it is that it is for that month, we'll create it. And I'll do a quick session, which means I'm shooting a lot less images. It's one outfit, one location. It's only children. I don't usually do families unless, as you'll see here, there's a father child or a mother child, but it's not a full family session. These sessions are a lot of fun. They're a great way for us to stay busy all year round. It helps hit those months that maybe we're not as busy. I know some of them fall within our busy months as well, but they're super popular and people want it every year. This year, and most years actually, our most popular one is the Vintage Feels, which we did in July this year, and I will show a little bit about that. And then we have ours up and coming for September as our back to school. That pretty much explains the mini events as best what they are.
Yeah, I think that's a good introduction.
Uh, so for me, they're a good benefit. I, there's a million reasons why I do them, but I think that being able to keep clients coming all year round is a big plus. Um, a lot of our clients have quite the investment when they come in for a real Bliss session where they're spending, $1,000+ on their session. They're not going to come do that multiple times in a year, most likely. In fact, I mean, you're lucky if you get them every year doing that. They might wait a couple years before they come back to get that big full session. So these kind of give them a chance to come in more than once and stay a part of the Bliss family and come in and get photos, even if it's a quick little thing, but they're still keeping up with the pictures of their children. Um, for me, it's one day of shooting. So it's super simple. I'll book them from 2 to 7, and I will book them every 30 minutes. And I can do anywhere from 10 to 15 sessions in that day. I create special packages and special products that we will call limited edition products that I design just for those mini sessions, which also creates a very need to want to come in. People want that special collage or that special piece that I don't offer on a regular session. Um, I think I said already, but just in case, I do this just for kids. So if they want that full family shoot, I will have them come in and do that. And I have people that will do both. They will come in and do a mini session for their kids, and then they'll wait till the fall and they'll come in and do their full family session where they can get Christmas cards and everything out of that as well. Here's a couple of cute little flyers. This was our vintage field day, and we're going to work on that a little bit today. This is our popular one. I have people that do it every year, so they wait for this event. I have a field across the street from my studio that I shoot in, and I bring the vintage furniture, and I try to mix it up every year of what the props and stuff that I bring, and we haul it over the furniture, and I stay there, and I have somebody that shuttles people back and forth, and I'm able to shoot everybody in that field. It's awesome. You can see in this bottom one, at certain times of year, it's covered in yellow flowers. So this was one year, and this was the next year that I did it, and it was the yellow flowers were actually gone at the point that we shot. And then this is the one that we're doing this next month. So this is our back to school sessions, trying to encourage people that their school photos don't have to be ugly, so they can do something a little bit more unique. We kind of put the little vintage twist. I have this old desk that a client gave me actually, and then I provide the fun little props. And these were all shot right out front of my studio. So as soon as fall hits, the leaves start falling. Oregon is gorgeous in the fall. Great little sessions to shoot. And then I've got a little, I think I'll do a slideshow. It might be a little bit of a delay. Do you have something to add, honey?
No, I think you did mention that the mini sessions are great for new customers too, to kind of introduce them to the studio, especially people who may not have the ability to spend that normal investment.
Yeah, I agree. I had said something earlier to my husband today that there somebody said it a long time ago to me, and I don't know if it was a Sandy Pooch or it was some speaker that I heard that said, a client may not be yours now, but they might be yours someday. And I wholeheartedly believe in that. I have these mini sessions so that people could come in and just test out Bliss and see what it's about and get that same experience, even though it's shorter and it's a smaller session and it's handled a little differently and it might be a little less expensive, but I still treat them the same as I would any Bliss client. They still experience the Bliss experience. I take care of them from the start to the finish. They still get everything packaged beautifully. I mean, they're getting the same product quality. It's just that I've made it a little less expensive because I'm gangbustering those shoots all in the same day. I have clients literally that I've had, 5 years ago that weren't technically my client. They came for these less expensive things and that's all they could afford. And now they're coming back and doing the full sessions and they're spending the minimum investment that we require. And they're a wonderful client now. So I think that that's something that can be very important, that we forget that, some people may not be able to afford us, but they would like to. So this helps give them a chance to come in and then hopefully be able to spend the bigger investment later on. So that's kind of the benefit of being a client. So this benefits me as well as it benefits my clients. My clients really love the little mini sessions. They are giving me ideas. I have clients coming in saying, can you do this? One of them said the pajama party. That came from a client. My kids have so many pajamas. We would love to do that. So I get ideas from my clients too, which makes it fun that they're excited about doing these special little mini events. I think that's pretty much the benefits of both. You have something to add? I can see it in your face.
Yeah. For those of you guys who are curious, we will be jumping into actually using some On1 software to do some editing here. We do like to talk a little bit about the business of running a portrait studio as well. One of the questions that's come in is kind of what's the pricing structure on a mini session? What do you typically charge? And keep in mind, anytime we talk about pricing, it's going to vary based on your location and who your clients are. So what we talk about is what works for us, but it may be different for you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I agree, because just because if I tell you what I charge, it may not work for you. I usually do about half of a session fee when I'm doing a mini session. So for like a regular session fee, we charge $100. For a mini session, I might charge $50. A couple of the mini events, I actually will tie the session fee within the packages. So when I build the packages, I will say there's no session fee, but it's included. They're required to buy a package. And that should be something else I point out. When I create my packages, every client that comes to a mini session is required to purchase a package. I don't do any packaging at Bliss. We have collections people can buy, or most of the time they just come in and they order their custom product and they get what they want, but I don't force them into a package choice. With the mini events, I guarantee that they have to buy at least a package, and I create 3 to 5 of them, kind of getting that sweet spot in the middle, knowing I want my clients to spend, $300 or $400, so I make sure that's the sweet spot package that I want them to get. And I may say, packages starting at $99. I rarely have anybody buy that package. So they come in to get something more than that, but it helps get them in the door. A normal session at Bliss, we require a minimum investment of about $500. So if you're doing a mini session, your investment's looking like $150 to $200. Again, keep in mind that they typically spend more than that, but at least it gives them a base that they know they're not quite as much invested as they would for a full session. So I live in Oregon. I mean, where you live depends. I mean, what you price other stuff's going to depend on how you're pricing. So I may not be exactly what works for you, but that is how we do it. Okay, is that pretty good? So I do want to talk a little bit about the business. I kind of want to give you guys a little bit of both. I know you get a lot of tutorials from On One, and I will go through and do some editing on my images as well. But because you do get the benefit of having a portrait photographer here, I do want to be able to make sure you guys get some of that information as well. So one of the things for me is being very organized and making your post-production a lot faster. So on a regular session, I shoot way more images. The post-production takes a lot longer for me because I have to go through and edit those images, as well as I probably have outfit changes. I may have location, changes, and it may not even be far, but the look may change. I may be in the same little area, but I'm shooting in a field and then I'm using a wall, or, I'm kind of changing the style of a regular shoot. With these mini sessions, they're exactly the same. So you guys saw the sample slideshows. That was actually 2 different mini sessions that you saw. That was a 70s retro with a bus, and then the one that's currently up right now is our vintage fields. So the look was pretty much the same. I mean, it was the same location. The lighting was fairly the same. I mean, you have to adjust a little for the sun, but I'm shooting the same direction. It's one outfit. I mean, it's super easy when you're doing post, as well as I don't shoot as many images, so that helps me as well. The way I organize for these is I use Lightroom, and on normal jobs, every job gets their own Lightroom catalog. When I do a mini session, I do one catalog for the whole session. So for this, I know I'm doing a webinar, so I kind of have stuff mixed in here, but this will give you a little bit of an idea. I have my 70 shoot all in one catalog, and I have all my clients' names that were there underneath it. So when I can do my editing, this will make it a little bit faster for me as well. I'll go through each job and I will edit them down quickly. So I may have, say 100 to 200 images, maybe. Sometimes I have a little more if there is groups. So if there's, 2 kids or 3 kids in a family, I'm going to have individuals of each of them, and I'll have some of them together. So I may have more on some of those circumstances, but if it's a single kid, I may not have as many. But I want to go ahead and narrow those down. I've pulled some from each of these shoots, but for a client, I give anywhere from 20 to 40. 40 is probably pushing it. I met with a client this morning, and I think she might have had 31. So it's somewhere kind of in that frame. I don't want them to have too many choices. It's a mini session. It should just be the best of the best, and that's all that I want them to be able to have. And so once they're organized this way, it makes it really easy to go through and edit. Do you want to interrupt with a question?
We have a couple questions about the lighting that you use for mini sessions.
I'm really simple. I use a light disc would be probably is about it actually. All of that you see here is done with natural light. So I keep the sun behind my subjects. Most of the time when I do mini sessions, I do afternoon light. So for both of my 70 shoot and the vintage fields that you're going to see here, I went from 2 to 7, so 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. Light's better. The sun's dropped a little bit in the sky. I keep the sun behind them, and then I will have somebody, if needed, holding a light disc in the background. And that's it. So I don't have external flash. I don't set up anything too crazy. The other thing too to keep in mind is I shoot kids. So you can get pretty crazy with lighting if you're, doing a model shoot and the person's going to stay put and you can control everything. But when you're shooting kids, they're quick. You have to be able to move with them and, make the changes quickly. So I prefer to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, so it's more about actually the lighting is controlled by the setup, making sure that where you're going to shoot and the time you're going to shoot and the angle you're going to shoot is going to influence that lighting a lot.
Correct. So, keeping that sun behind, I can do some of these. The sun's behind the bus when I shot all of these. We did have to move the bus once. I will tell you that where the sun was and where things were angled in the field, we were able to do part of the sessions with it one way, and then we had to actually adjust it so that we could get the sun to drop behind again. So once I have them organized, let's go ahead. If there's no other questions kind of about the back end, I think I want to go ahead and start working on images. Does that sound good?
Yep, that'd be great.
Okay, so the first thing I want to do is let's go ahead and grab an image. So when I do a theme, I definitely have a post look that I'm hoping for. I'm going to just use Lightroom, and I'm going to right click, and we'll do an edit in, and I'm going to pull this right into Perfect Effects. And depending on your workflow, this may change. For me, I'm a little bit of a rule breaker, and my husband's probably going to kill me for this, but I would just edit the original. And part of that is because I have my originals already backed up on a disk. So if anything happens and I make a mistake or for some reason I had to grab that original file, I can. But for me, it's faster just to edit over top of the ones that I have, and those are the ones that I'm going to use to order and show my client. For webinar purposes, I'm going to go ahead and edit a copy, but please do whatever works best for your workflow.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to note is everybody's workflow is different, and people, just like Canon versus Nikon, people get very religious about workflow, and you don't have to be. It comes down to the end of the day of what are you producing, what are you hanging on your wall, do your clients like what they're getting? You'll notice that Whitney shoots in JPEG. She doesn't shoot in RAW. She's been a photographer for 15 years. She has her exposures down, and she knows what she's getting, so JPEG works fine for her. And she tends to do very little editing that would cause the posterization you'd get working on a JPEG.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if RAW works for you, great. If JPEG works for you, great. I have huge enlargements on my walls. I, design albums. But again, he's right. I don't do too much to my images that's going to cause any problems. If it needs that much work to it, I'm probably going to delete it. The more time you're spending in post-production, the less money you're making in your job. I mean, I'm doing this as a career and as a business, so I have to treat it that way. So I want things to be as quick and easy as I possibly can make it. So this is one of the images from the 70s shoot. So both of the mini sessions that I pulled images from do have a similar look and feel. We had done the vintage fields every year. The 70s shoot was a little bit new this year. My husband's best friend actually owns this crazy bus, and I loved it and got this idea for my 2-year-old that we have. I wanted her 2-year-old photos to be something a little different. So I created this mini session for my daughter and then basically opened it up for everybody else, which was beautiful. I was able to get her photographs and make some money while I was at it. Super cool bus. I want a definite 70s vintage vibe to it. I want a little red tint if you think kind of back to the look of those photos. Cute picture when you're looking at it, but I definitely want to finish it up. So what I am going to do is open up the vintage category, which seems like a no-brainer. So we want a vintage look. I clicked on the little quick view. I don't know, maybe I'll just go back. I go a little fast because I'm so used to this program. But next to the vintage, there's a little quick view button. So we're going to click on the quick view to open up all the little thumbnails. I do this typically when I'm not 100% sure what effect I want to add. Once I've learned my effects or created presets or, know for sure that that's what I want, I probably wouldn't go into the quick view. But for something like this where maybe I'm not totally sure, I want to open it up and kind of look, be able to see what the thumbnails do and kind of see the looks. I know that if I scroll to the very bottom, we're going to hit my favorites. So my favorite effects for you guys, so you'll know, is the Tijuana Sunrise. So basically these 4: Tijuana Sunrise, Vintage Blue Yellow, Vintage Cool, and Vintage Red Yellow. Those I use pretty religiously. Different images, different looks. I'll pull a different one. For this one, if you're looking at them, I mean, the Tijuana Sunrise is great, but I wanted to go a little bit more vintage, so I'm going to go ahead and hit that Vintage Red Yellow and add that. And then once I have that, this is pretty much the look that I did for the whole 70 shoots. This is super simple. So I have that effect, and then I'm going to add a portrait sharpen. And if you go up into the search, you can actually search it, although it didn't come up. Did I spell it wrong?
I spelled portrait wrong, I think.
Portrait. There we go. Sorry, bad spelling. I'm going to add a little portrait sharpen to that, and I forgot to add the first filter, didn't I?
Yep.
Okay, hold on one second. Backtrack. One quick detail. If you don't double click on the effect, you do need to actually hit the add button. So let's add that so we can get onto a new empty layer. And then I'm going to go back over and go ahead and I'm going to double click this time on portrait sharpen. And that should automatically add that. So we're back on an empty layer again. And then one other little finish for this I think I'll do is just add a little vignette. Let's make sure we spell that right. And then I prefer the subtle vignette. So just a little bit to finish off the edges, but not too much that it's overpowering. And then we'll go ahead and apply. Actually, it sounds like Dan wants me to let you guys see the before and after. So there's our before, a little cooler, a little bit blue to it. Still cute, but not quite the effect that I wanted. And there we've warmed it up and finished the print a little bit. So we're going to go ahead. Actually, let's do one other thing. So once I've done this, and I know this is pretty much the look that I'm going to do for this particular shoot, I would go ahead and make a preset. So we can save this preset, and you can type in the preset name. So we'll just call this 70s Retro. Oops. Apparently I cannot spell today. And then the categories, I've already done this, but you can create a category. I'm going to go ahead and do mini events and then type in you as a creator and whatever description that you want. I've already saved this exact preset, so I'm not going to save it, but we'll show you what I do with that. But once the preset's there, I've actually cut my post-production time in about half at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. Give it just a second here to finish. Is everybody still doing okay?
Yeah, we did have a question. This always comes up. What is your favorite lens to shoot with?
85-1.8. I can say that without even blinking. So I use that more than any lens ever at 1.8 if I can pull it off, and I usually can. Pretty much everything you're seeing here is going to be shot with that lens, 85-1.8. So every once in a while I'll grab another one if I need something else, but definitely my favorite. Okay, so here is our finished image. So kind of cute, a little bit better than the before, gives it a little bit vintage look. So from here, I can batch these out very easily. And I actually want to show you how to do that, but I'll only do a couple so it doesn't take too long for you guys. But once I have got my desired look, I've already created my preset. I'm going to go ahead and grab, so let's just grab 2 of these. And you might have to pick and choose, because as I'm looking through these, I would grab all of the bus shots and go ahead and make them the 70s look. But there's a couple of them, like this one, I might want to do something a little different from, so I wouldn't, or different too, so I probably wouldn't grab those in my batch. I would just want to make sure that it's the ones that I definitely want that 70s look and feel to. So let's just grab 2 of these images, and we're going to go up to File, and we're going to export these. And up in the top, you're going to have an export to, and yours probably defaulted to your hard drive if you've never done this before. So you do need to make sure that you select Perfect Effects 4. And I've missed this step before, and it's exported somewhere weird. So make sure you're getting in the right spot. And then in the category, we created that preset. So we're going to scroll all the way down to our presets, and it was in the mini events category. And the preset is the Retro 70, which that's the only one I have in there currently. If I did have more, it would show you the rest of them. You could select the one that you want. We are going to export it to the same folder as the original folder or original photo. And we're going to go ahead and add it to a stack above the original so that our new one will be on top. Okay. And then I have all this stuff closed because I don't use any of this. Is there any of this that's important that they need to know, honey? I have all these closed.
Let's take a look at the File Settings tab. So in here, it'll take whatever the original file type is. In this case, the original files are JPEG, and it's going to make a copy of them and save them as a PSD file. And then it's going to stack that PSD on top of the JPEG back inside of Lightroom.
Which is fine. If you want to change this, for me, I'd probably change it to JPEG actually, just so that I could have a JPEG file. I don't need a bunch of PSD files if I'm going to do this to everybody, and it will, or to every single image, and it might take a lot more time that way as well and space. But for now, we'll just leave it as a PSD, but definitely make sure you change this to the format that you need for your workflow. I think that's it, right?
Yep, I think the rest will be fine.
The rest should be fine. I have my stuff, it's all turned off. So make sure that you don't have this stuff. You're not resizing your image when you do this. I'm not doing anything to my image other than adding the effects. And then we're going to go ahead and hit export.
Now that image sizing can be handy if you're preparing JPEGs for a website or for a sales workflow. A lot of photographers use a different tool when they sell their images to their clients. So you could batch process all of your images using this technique, but save them as smaller JPEGs that you're going to import into your sales software instead.
Correct, which I do that. I use Animoto, and I do export everything out from Lightroom into smaller files. You know, I do long side as, 1050 pixels or whichever, and then I export them out and upload them to Animoto. So It does take a little bit of time, but it's nothing you can, have to do. Just sit and wait. I didn't want to do more than 2 just so that it would go a little faster for you guys. But in comparison to opening every single image up and trying to add these one at a time, this is going to cut it down way better. Number 2.
It's actually a great question. That is, what do you actually show to the clients? Do you show them the original images or only the images that you've applied the look to?
Only the finished images. So I'm still maintaining quality and artistry for all of my images. So I'm not going to show something to a client that I don't want them to have. So because this was a theme shoot and because I made it very clear that it was a 70s retro vintage shoot and that's the style that they were getting, that's exactly what I want them to see and that's what I want them to order and what I want them hanging on their wall. So for me, same thing. If this gets asked a lot, actually, I shoot in black and white, which I know some people would say is a big no-no, but for me, I'm back from the film days where we shot a roll of film. So I enjoy shooting in black and white. My camera does a great job. I may still add a little effects and filters, but for me, that saves time in post as well because I'm not changing a bunch of stuff to black and white. I shot it while I was going. I've got my camera set up super quick so that I can make those changes. I will show my client a black and white photo and I don't tell them that, oh, well, you could have that in color. Again, it's back to I'm the artist. I wanted it in black and white. It looks beautiful in black and white. There's a reason that it's in black and white. So I tell them I shot it in black and white, which 90% of the time is true. Every once in a while I do convert something to black and white, but that's what they're seeing is the finished image. So that's what they're going to get.
Yeah, and I know at least for me, when I shoot and I know I'm shooting in black and white, I actually compose and meter slightly differently because I'm thinking in black and white instead of thinking in color. So you can't just take something you shot in color and necessarily make a great black and white out of it. It requires some forethought. You have to be purposeful about what you're shooting.
Yeah, I may not do that, but I definitely am more visual and I like instant gratification. So if I shoot it in black and white, I want to be excited about it right then. I don't want to think, oh, I can make that in black and white later, which I can do. So again, totally something I do. You do not have to do that, but it is kind of fun. So if you ever get brave and your camera shoots in black and white, could be fun. So these are the images I just wanted you to see. So the 2 that I grabbed have been added with the exact same effects. They look perfect. They're done. So this is what I would give to my client to see.
We do have a question about batch processing in other places. So once you've created that preset inside of Perfect Effects, you can batch process inside of Lightroom the way that Whitney showed, but you can also do it inside of Aperture. Just select all the images you want to process, send it to Perfect Effects. The first image will open up. You can apply your preset to it. Then when you hit apply, every other image that you had selected will get processed with the same settings. And if you are someone who does your work through Photoshop, you can use an action in Photoshop to batch process these as well.
Good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry, one more question. Batch processing in the suite as a standalone. So not today, but if you go to labs.ononesoftware.com, you'll get a sneak peek of something that we're working on for the future instead. So it won't be long before you'll be able to do it on do batch processing in the suite by itself.
Yep, not allowed to do that yet, but this works too. So if a Lightroom user, you can batch them out really easily. Got more? I keep seeing questions pop up.
Nope, I think that's a good start so far.
Okay, I think I pretty much did it. One thing you could actually say, if you guys are interested in seeing the whole finished job on this, so the 70s shoot I actually did post on my website. So when I do mini sessions, I will not do one single slideshow for a client because there's only a few images. It would take like 10 seconds, but I will do an event slideshow where I'll go through each of my clients, pull out a few of my favorites. We do video clips, so we'll add some video clips in with it, add some music, and then I'll post that on my blog and let people kind of get their little sneak peek before they come in and view. So I have that posted if anybody's brave and wants to look. I'll have Dan type it in the chat model, if you will. It's on my blog, so I'm going to have him give you the direct link to it. But if you get to my blog and just search 70s in the upper right-hand corner, you'll get there as well. But is that okay? Do you mind doing that real quick?
I can do that.
So you guys can see. If anybody wants to go look, you can see. It's kind of fun with the little video clips, and it's got a little 70s music to it. It's kind of cute. So I'm going to go ahead and do another one. I think we're okay. You can butt in if you need to, but I want to edit another one. So one thing that, let's do the Smith Girls. So one of the things that happened a little differently at this one is this crazy chair, I called it the ugly chair, but it's actually quite fabulous, was inside of Johnny's bus. And he just had pulled it out. And I said, that chair is awesome. I have to use it. It was not intended when I started the shoot. It was definitely all about the bus. That's everything that I did. But I found this chair and threw it on the side of the field and was able to do a couple shots on that. Well, when I look at this image, let's go ahead and open it into Perfect Effects. To me, this image does not feel the same as the, retro bus shoot. So it's a little cooler of a shot, and I think that it needs a little different effect. So when I would batch out, this would not be one that I would select. I actually would want to do something special to this one. Now, I can do that through, just pulling out certain ones, which I'll tend to do. I really want to work on that one, or I really want to do something different with that one. Or if there's a series of these, I would still batch these, but I would make this whole chair series the same. So let's pull up the quick view again. So we're going to go down to the vintage category and click on the quick view just so we can get a look. And then I am going to scroll down to my favorites, which are down at the bottom. And as I said, kind of from Tijuana down, those are pretty much my favorites that I love to use. And for this one, I really like this vintage blue yellow or the vintage cool. So let's go ahead and grab this one and see what happens. See, I like that much better. And I'm going to pull the opacity back just a touch so it's not quite so blue. And then be sure to click the add. If you're doing it from quick view, you do actually need to add. If you've got it in the thumbnail view, you can just double click and it will work for you. So let's go ahead and add that filter. So we're on our empty layer. And then another, I still would add that portrait sharp. That's just a common one for me. You can do, let's make sure I spell this right this time. Other little sharpening ones. There's some, texture. Cannot spell portrait. Let's try it again. There's some texture boosters, but I usually like to do some little sharp that I can pop in there. So let's do that one. And then one other little thing with all of this extra little space here, I think it would be really cool with a texture. So let's add one more thing to it. So on the textures, I'm going to go to, actually, I think in Vignette it also has one. So let's look in the Vignette Lighten. So this Grunge Vignette Light, and there's also a Grunge Vignette Dark, are two that I really like. So let's add this Vignette Light, which is actually going to brighten them up a little bit. Love the texture that adds on the side. The only thing it will do is that sometimes it'll make their skin just a little too white. So I think it's important to pull it back just a little bit. And actually, while it's full power, I will show you guys one other thing. Excuse me. This worked out perfect because I kind of planned ahead of time, but you can see that it's nice and bright right where they are. That doesn't always work so fabulous. So down here in the effect options, there's these little rotate buttons. This filter in particular, I will actually rotate depending on where my subject is lined up in the frame. Otherwise, you're going to have that black texture around them. So there's been many a times that I'll do that. Sometimes if you're trying to batch out, you do need to be careful and make sure that your subject is in the same location if you're using this particular filter. If not, then you will need to do them one at a time. So this defaults right here, so we're already perfect. So I'm going to pull this opacity down just a little bit, and then we will hit add, and then let's go ahead and finish it off with just a little darkened vignette. So we'll do this subtle. The little search guy works out great if you remember what stuff's named. The other thing you can do is hit the little flag button in the bottom right, and that'll save it in your favorites. So let's do the subtle vignette, and there is my finished image. So we'll do a before. So again, cute, great. To me, that's finished. That's more my style, and that looks, I mean, just a couple of steps there. You can save the preset out. You have it ready for next time. This is something I use quite often and definitely fits my style. Let's hit apply. Okay, got any questions while that's running?
Oh yeah, there's lots of questions. One that I noticed is if you're batch processing through Lightroom and the images aren't getting back to Lightroom, there's two really common causes of that. The first one is when you started in Lightroom, you may have not been on a folder. You may have either been on a collection, especially one of the smart collections at the top, like all images or recent imports. And those images are actually coming back to Lightroom. You're just not seeing them because it's not part of the collection that you started with. So making sure you're actually on a folder to start. And then when you set up the export, there's a checkbox in there that says add to the catalog. Make sure that checkbox is on, and that makes sure they get back into Lightroom for you.
Would it help if I showed that really quick?
Sure.
I'm visual, so just really quick. Sorry for double dipping here, but so we're just talking about this little guy right here. Make sure it's add to the catalog. And then it's in the same folder as the original.
Yep.
Okay. So there's my finished cute little girls. And again, there's your before and after. So you can just see the difference. And I think this is a little rule breaking for me because normally I don't like to make two different looks when I'm doing a mini session, but there was only a few and it was necessary. And I think that it's cute, but it did need a different look that was applied to it. Okay, you said lots. Do you still have more? Because I can keep going on more images.
Yeah, well, we'll grab a couple questions here. One of the questions is about when you're applying the sharpening in Perfect Effects, if you can do it locally rather than to the entire image. And there's a couple things there. First off, the portrait sharpen is designed for a portrait image, and it automatically removes the sharpening from the skin. So it sharpens everything in the image except for skin, which is usually what you'd want to do with a portrait. You can also use the masking brush or the masking bug to apply the effect to only certain parts of the image as well. So you can always mask it in or out where you want, or you can use the blending options to limit it to a certain color or tonal range. So lots of ways to control where the sharpening gets applied.
On a side note, I see several people asking what camera I shoot with, which I don't know how much matters, but I do have a Canon 5D Mark II. That's what I've been using for quite a few years now. Actually, I really love that camera, but it's all in what you do with it.
Yeah, and I think one of the context around that was people wanting to figure out how they actually shoot black and white in the camera. And just about any camera will give you that option. Both Canon and Nikon, I know, give you the option to shoot color or black and white and actually tune those to, even if you want it to look like black and white with a red filter or black and white with a green filter, you can do that right in the camera.
So here's one, for example. This was shot in black and white. So it's still great. I would probably add a little bit to it. I tend to warm my black and whites up a little bit. Not always, but depending on the image. But we can do that actually really quick. Let's do that. Oops, trying to open in Photoshop. So let's do an edit in and let's do this in Perfect Effects. I know there's Perfect Black and White now as well, but I've used Perfect Effects for so long. I still tend to use it more when I'm doing my black and white conversions. I feel like I'm going to get yelled at for shooting in black and white, but you don't have to shoot in black and white. I just really like it. So it works for me, and it helps save me time because then I already have the stuff that I wanted in black and white for the most part. So if I had this one, I would probably want to warm it up just a little bit, and that's mostly preference. I tend to like a little warmer on the black and whites. So I'm going to go to the black and white toners, and we'll click on the little quick view. And I like quite a few of these. I mean, and even looking at them, they look pretty cute. But typically, I like everything at the bottom, it seems like. The warm gray and the warm gray violet are two of my favorites. And depending on the look, for this one, I would probably go the warm gray violet. Sometimes I do the warm gray. But I'm going to go a little bit more purpley, I guess, at this point. And then I would pull it back just a touch so it's not quite so overpowering. And then go ahead and add that. And then something like this too. I still like that grunge vignette that I did on the color image of these girls. And I think it looks kind of cute on a black and white too. So I'm going to grab the grunge vignette light, and it adds a fun little texture, lightens them up a little bit. I think that's super cute. And then I almost always finish with that subtle vignette. It doesn't always need it, but sometimes I think it just gives it that little finished look. Subtle vignette. So you can kind of see, even as I do this, I have similar filters that I really like. So something like this one. So the subtle vignette didn't actually add very much. So I would stack it. So I would go ahead and add that one so I have a subtle vignette, and then I would do it one more time and darken it up one more time. And I've done that quite a few times where I'll add two subtle vignettes on top of each other if the one doesn't make it enough. But then this kind of darkens up a little bit up in the sky and gives it a little bit of edging in it too. So there's started with a black and white and still finished it a little bit. You could still probably add a portrait sharpen. I think somebody asked something about adding it at the end, and I do like to add at the end. If I get it spelled right one time, I'm going to be impressed. There we go. Fingers are typing too fast. You want
One
some?
thing that can be really handy is if there's filters that you use all the time, you can always click this little favorite flag right
I said that
here.
already.
Oh, okay. And then you can go up to your favorites and it'll be in the list of the stuff you use.
I said that already.
Oh, I wasn't paying attention
But
clearly.
thank you. You were answering questions. But just in case, that is true. You can put stuff in your favorites. And same thing with the creating the presets. I mean, I've got my stuff saved in here that I use quite often as well. I'm just showing you guys the long route so you can kind of see where things are. So we'll go ahead and apply that.
There's a question about, do we ever use anything for skin smoothing? And
You know, I shoot kids. I mean, I think skin smoothing becomes more important when you have, adults or acne when you're shooting seniors and that sort. I do some babies that have the baby acne that they get, and I'll typically just retouch it. It doesn't happen very often. But for little kids, I mean, for the most part, I might do a scratch. They might have a little scratch. They'll come in and have done something, and it's just a quick, easy retouch. So I don't really do a lot of smoothing. I like my stuff to look as real as possible. So I know we're adding effects and we're kind of making them look a little funky or different, but at the same time, I still want the kids to look as real as they can. I don't want to over retouch or make that porcelain skin. And that's just because it's not my style. There's plenty of people that do that kind of look, and they want them to have, the smoothest baby look. And it's more of studio and a formal portrait. And, I see it more in those ways, but it's not really me. Do you think?
yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. There was a question about when we do our prints, do we do those in-house or do we send them out, and what sizes do we offer?
We do a little bit of both. So we have a large format printer in home that we do all of our canvas prints in-house. My husband actually does the printing and wrapping on those, and we sell those, which is great. It gives us a little bit more control over them. And then anything else that I have, I send to White House Custom Color. They do a fabulous job. I finish my prints. I texture them. Things are mounted if they're going in frames. We definitely sell a lot of finished product. I am not a studio that gives away negatives or, has you come in and do your shoot and hand you a CD. People are definitely coming for me for something finished. They want that print on their wall. They want a custom album that I designed, or they're wanting something. So I think that's something that's been very important to me, and it's been a little bit of struggle as the industry changes, but at the same time, I still get those clients that definitely care and want to hire me as a professional to take care of them, and that's what I try to do.
Yeah. And in terms of sizes, anything bigger than an 8x10 is sold in a frame or it's printed on canvas and is a gallery wrap. And we do up to about 30x40. Most people tend to be 24x30 is about the biggest that they'll buy, but we'll do
30 by
bigger than-
30. I've done some 30 by 30s, so and 24 by 36s as well, actually. So it kind of depends. I get more people that they have a harder time picking one. So they're ended up going to an album, or they go to a series, or they go to a collage, which, I mean, in a way that's a compliment, but anymore, I think that one formal portrait doesn't happen as much. They want a collection of them or, something, but we will get the, one canvas or the, they're going to put above their fireplace, or a big frame print they're going to put above a bed. So that does happen, but it's not as common anymore. I hope everybody is getting something out of this. I'm loving the questions, so if you have more, go ahead and pop them out my way. I can keep going. I can move into the Rasmussen's actually and do a little bit more in depth. I can do a masking on an image.
Yeah, actually, one of the questions we've seen several times is how to apply an effect to just a part of the image. So maybe we can.
So I can mask.
Yeah,
I'm going to mask something.
Masking.
So let's do something a little more here. So I'm going to add texture to this one and then mask out on the little girl's face, because sometimes the masking or the textures I don't necessarily want to go over a kid's face. So we can mask it out really easily, actually. So this is from my second event. So all those other ones were from the 70s event. This one we just did in July. This is our vintage fields that I do every year. Let's add a filter to this one. So let's do a couple. So I'm going to search because I know what I'm looking for this time. So let's do a Tijuana Sunrise. And never mind, because we have established that I cannot spell today. So let's go back to the vintage. There's a reason I'm a photographer. So I've grabbed several of these vintage ones. So I'm going to take the Tijuana Sunrise, which I think is great. I'm going to pull it back just a touch so she's not quite so red in her face. Then we'll go ahead and add that. And then I'm going to warm this up a little bit, and it's a rice paper texture. And I'm going to grab the rice paper. Let's try this one first. I think it's the other one. Yep. So I don't really like this one because it's got this little border on it. So we're going to grab the rice paper vignette, which is here. So I love what this does to the flowers and everywhere you see it, but it's all over this little girl's face. Don't love. So let's go ahead and mask that. So we're going to go up here to the masking brush. So I'm not going to use the masking bug because we just want to get it on her face. So I'm going to grab the brush and I'm going to adjust my brush size with the brackets. You can also see that it's moving up here where the size is, or you can use left and right brackets to make it bigger and smaller. And then I'm going to go ahead and start brushing on her face. There might be a little bit of delay here, and I might do a little bit in her hair. It's not as big a deal. It definitely bothers me on the skin more than anything. So I'm going to pull this all back. And then if we head down to the little spot down here where it says after, and I'm going to go ahead and change it to mask red so I can see my mask. So actually I did a pretty good job. So I was going to have you look and you can see exactly where I masked. We pretty much have all of her skin here. There's also, which Dan will probably want me to tell you, there's the perfect brush, which is up here that you can click on. If you click on perfect brush, it's going to give you a more defined line and edge. With this, I kind of had a little fudge room because her hair and I wasn't quite as worried. But if you have an area where you need to really watch the line, if you click on perfect brush, it will actually keep that mask right at the edge of your line. And you can see as I go along the side of her finger, it doesn't go outside of it at all. Keeps it right inside. That was actually great. Okay, so little fudge room, but not too bad. I'm not worried about her hair. That's fine. So let's turn the mask back on and we'll look at the after. And then let's actually look at the before. And there's the after. So a little bit more finished. And then I would probably do my same ones that I've been doing each time, my portrait sharpen, and maybe just a darkened vignette on the side just to finish it up. And that's, again, just my style. I kind of like to add at the end. Let's do sharpening quick view. There's a couple in here I've used. I think that the amazing detail will work great sometimes. I will use the texture booster sometimes as well. You have to be really careful with that one because it can overdo it. But if you have a really good image that you really want to pull that texture out, you can. I am going to go back because I don't think I added that last filter. Sure did not. So you need to make sure that you add that filter. So I don't know if you guys saw that when I just opened up the sharpening, you couldn't see this nice warming to it. It hadn't actually added that filter yet. And that was my fault for not clicking the add. So we need to make sure we're on a new layer before we open that back up again. Caught myself doing that multiple times. And then let's go ahead. Let's do amazing detail. I've done portrait sharpen several times. So let's grab another one. And I love something like this because it just gets in on her face and just gives it nice sharp there. Let's add. Don't do that again. And then I'm going to just do the subtle vignette and we will be finished with this one. So there is your after, and there is your before. Kind of amazing the difference, right? And I always say my thing is sucky photographer, awesome photographer. Just kidding, but that's how I feel sometimes. I'll look at an image and think that it's absolutely great, and then I'll just take a little bit of extra time finishing it, and I feel like I've made a world of a difference. I mean, and that was just a couple effects. It didn't take too long. It was pretty easy. Even the masking job on that was fairly easy. And we'll hit apply.
I had a question about workflow, about when to do your work in Lightroom versus doing your work in the Perfect Photo Suite. And everybody's answer is a little bit different on this. I think that Lightroom is a great place to keep track of your images, and it's a great place to do basic color and tonal corrections. That's really what it's designed to do. So, for example, if you have a whole shoot with 100 pictures and they're all a little off color, or it's a great place to go through and do a white balance correction on all of them. And I would do all of that before I brought the image into the suite. And so it's kind of you do the color correction, tonal corrections first, then you apply your special effects, then you prepare it for printing. It's kind of the order you'd want to do that in.
Yeah, it kind of depends on what works for you too. So, and I've said from the very beginning, post-production, needs to be quick. I mean, if you're trying to make money at this, you really have to manage your time well. You need to have a workflow that you stick to. Keep it as consistent as you possibly can. I've had photographers, friends, in fact, who have images all over everywhere. Can't find them. Don't know, where this client's job is because they hadn't had a system down that works for them. I do the same thing, whether it's right or wrong, doesn't matter. It's still the same exact thing every single time. I have a catalog. I organize, I delete, I back up my images. Whatever it is that I need to do, I have the same system every single time. And then with my post, with my adding effects, as we talked about, I do show everybody finished images. Now, I will say I show them finished. I don't show them necessarily fully retouched. So if a kid scratches their face and I have to retouch it, I may not retouch it in every single image. I will wait until they place their order and do that. And I will tell them. I'll do it on a few. I'll grab a few of my favorites, or if I'm doing a sneak peek on my blog, I'll make sure that those are fully done. But if I have 60 images I'm showing my client, I'm not going to take 60 images to retouch out a scratch on that kid's face. But other than that, I mean, what you see here, I would show clients this finished image. I would not show them this first image and tell them, oh, I'll fix it. It'll look good when you get it. I want them to see exactly what they're getting when they order. And then if there's, a hair I have to retouch, I will do that in their order, and that's fine.
A couple more great questions. One is about selling online. Do you sell your images online?
So I used to. I did for years, and a lot of that goes back to weddings. When I was shooting weddings, you'd post them online so friends and family could view. I have stopped doing that probably, I don't know what you think, honey, 3 or 4 years ago, and my sales have increased drastically. I still get a few people that are a little irritated, but it's kind of one of those things that I would post them online, and they'd say, "Well, my mom wants to see him, my so and so wants to see." Well, they just want to see him. So it was costing me money and a service to put them online so that everybody could just see their images, and nobody ever ordered. So it kind of became to a point where I said, this is a waste of my time and I don't want to do it anymore. So I started charging, and that didn't go so well because nobody wanted to pay for it. So problem solved. And I even said, I'll charge you unless somebody makes an order. That worked for a little bit. If they placed an order, I would refund them the money. But typically they just want to see them. So my fix for that was I put them online, a couple. So I do a sneak peek on my blog. If anybody looked at my blog, you'll see each job has a little bit of a sneak peek. And if they have a Facebook page, I'll tag them in a couple Facebook pages. It's got my logo, my watermark, everything's on it like I want it. It's web ready, and they get to see 3 or 4 images. So if they want to share, those are the ones they share. If I have out of town, grandparents or somebody that wants to see, I actually set up a meeting and they look at my computer and we sit together and we place an order. Again, sales went up drastically. I can make $500 orders if I'm able to walk somebody through it, even if I'm not there sitting there holding their hand. When somebody goes to go online, they're less likely to place that big of order because I can't guide them into it. I can't, say, let's do a collage. Okay, you like all of these images. Here's what I can do for you. So I'm able to be that person that helps guide my client into what they want rather than them just picking, here's one 8x10. Oh, here's one 5x7. I can get them something custom and exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah, and we actually use the GoToMeeting service, the same thing that we're using for this webinar. You can pay a small monthly fee for, and you can share your screen with your customers and do online sales sessions where you can guide them through everything. I mean, we offer a bazillion different products, and there's no way you'd want to put all those in a shopping cart because all those online shopping carts are really designed for one image at a time. People are just going to order a bunch of 5x7s and that's it. They're not going to be able to order an album or order a collage because they can't pick out multiple images to put into something. So they really need someone to guide them through that process.
Correct. And that's half our job. I mean, we do the shooting, we do the post, but being the salesperson to a certain extent is the finished product. I mean, and for me, that is what it is. That's not let me sell my client and let me, of course we all want to get as much money out of our clients as we can, but at the same time, I approach it as I want to get them what they want. I want them to leave super happy. I want them to be excited, no matter how much money they spent, I want them to be excited about the product that they're going to be receiving. And I help them, what are you thinking? What are you looking for? Are you, well, we've got like 40 favorites. Well, an album would be a great way to go. I guide them through that because a lot of times people don't know. I mean, they come and they're like, I don't know, what should I get? And you can say, well, do you prefer this or do you prefer that? And you kind of guide them through it. And for me, that's fun. I've had people do my sales sessions and it's not always as great. I think something gets lost in translation. I think I definitely like being the one that's there to finish that product for my client.
Getting a lot of questions actually about that sales process. So maybe you can kind of explain how a sales session would actually work in the studio.
So a couple weeks after the session, I will have my client come in and If it's a mini session, I just do a slideshow through ProSelect, which is my selling software that I use. If it's a full session that somebody did, I will have an Animoto slideshow. And that's because it takes a little bit longer and I can sell those slideshows. If there's only 20 images I'm showing a client, it's a little silly for me to do an Animoto. But I will let them come in. I have a slideshow projector. I mean, they're sitting on a couch. There's, they can bring their friends and family or whoever's in the decision making for the order. I typically ask people to leave kids at home if they can, which in the end they always prefer. But I'll let them see all the images, and then we will go into ProSelect and we'll narrow the images down to their favorites. And then once we've got those kind of narrowed down, that's when I'll kind of start my process and, guide them through what it is that our end result we're trying to get. I show them the product I have around the studio. And as I did say before, we have a lot of custom stuff. That's kind of my thing, the custom albums. We do custom framing. We have custom collages that I design. So I've kind of got a lot of those things as well. So I want to be able to, get a feel for what they love and then be able to guide them down the path.
Wonderful. We are getting short on time. I think we're going to have time for probably 2 more questions. One that I saw was, how do you use Photoshop in your workflow? Is that something that you use?
I'm doing an on-one software webinar. I'm just kidding.
Our tools work inside of Photoshop, just like they work inside of Lightroom and everything else.
I'm just kidding. I do use Photoshop. I'm definitely a Photoshop user. That's because I've used it for many, many, many years before all of this other technology has came out. I do a lot of my retouching in Photoshop and most of my design in Photoshop. So I do use on-one, and I'm not even just saying that but for all my effects and adding, even if I'm doing it through Photoshop, I will still open up, perfect effects and add the image or effects that I want to that image. But I do a lot of custom album design. So that's all done from scratch in Photoshop. So I'm comfortable working in Photoshop. So I spend a lot of time there. I can talk fast, ask quick.
Questions about, do you only shoot outdoors or do you shoot in the studio at all?
I shoot both. So typically I'm going to prefer to shoot outdoors. We live in Oregon, so that doesn't always work, but I won't lie. I have shot in the rain or in between rain, but I do have my studio for those times when we can't, or if it's a shoot that requires it. So sometimes newborn babies will do more in the studio, or if we get in the winter months and I don't have a choice. But my preference is always going to be do outside if I can. Do I ask deposits for someone for mini sessions? I'm not sure if I made all of that, but yes, if somebody books a mini session, I do require that they pay upfront. That holds their spot and they do not get that back. So when I'm booking these sessions, there's no cancellations or refunds because they're taking a spot from somebody and I can take only a limited amount of people. Any other quickies?
I see 2 or 3 questions about sorry, my brain just went blank. About albums, who you actually do your albums through.
If it's a press printed book, I will use White House Custom Color, and those I mostly use for seniors. They're more like a yearbook style because they're press printed, so I think that's more fitting.
Day in the life too.
Or yeah, my day in the life, but that's a whole nother webinar. So I have day in the life books, but I do use if I'm doing a press printed book, I use White House Custom Color. If I have a book that I'm mounting that I want to be more of a professional book, like my baby albums, I use Renaissance the book. And that is something my studio and me is a little more known for. But again, that's something entirely different. But that's our baby plans and baby albums. Hurry quick. Any more?
Question about how many images you're willing to show in a sales session?
In a regular session or a mini session?
Let's just do both.
Mini session, I think I said earlier, is anywhere from 20 to 40. 40 is pushing it a little bit. A regular session is probably 60 to 80. I'm giving you a little bit of a range because, again, sometimes it depends if there's family or if there's multiple kids. You get a little heavier on them because there's different faces you have to worry about. But if it's just a single kid, you're looking like more 40-ish, 50-ish.
All right, I think we have time for one last question, and it's how do you shoot outside into the sun? And we already answered we shoot mostly with the 85 1.8 or the 70 to 200 2.8, but when you're photographing outside, make sure you got a lens hood on your
Nah,
camera.
nobody needs a lens hood. Okay, we're gonna disagree. Just kidding. Lens hood is fine. I actually don't have any of my lens hood on. It's pretty funny, but I do have to sometimes cover it with my hands. So that is where my husband's going with that. But typically, I do not shoot at 12 noon. I will do anything to not. I am self-employed, so I will move that time to make sure that it's at least in the afternoon or 1 o'clock, so the sun has been able to drop a little bit. But as long as I keep that sun behind or look for shade, I'm usually golden. And again, I mean, all that you're seeing here is shot with an 85-1.8, all of these are, and no lens hood. But see, look at that beautiful sun coming through.
To be honest, that's actually part of your style right now, is that lens flare. You notice that all of these are, you'll see some lens flare or some spill in the shots, especially in this vintage session. We're actually moving on purpose to try to get lens flare because that's part of the look that we're going for. I fix that. Alrighty. I think that is about it. I thank everybody for coming. Again, the session is recorded. It'll be online in about 2 days. You can find that in the archive webinar section on our website or on our YouTube channel.
I want to say thanks too, just because I know he's going to wrap it up. So thank you for everybody that tuned in. I hope that you were able to take something away from it and learn something or got a little piece of knowledge. So thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. Have a great day. Bye-bye.